Blake Lively is seeking all kinds of information from Perez in her case against Justin Baldoni. She's still trying to support this delusional fantasy of a smear campaign against her and will not accept that the public backlash is organic. Despite there now being several documents from members of the public who Blake tried to subpoena, explaining exactly why they don't like her and how they were never paid to say anything that they've said. Now she's asking Perez for all kinds of things, and he argues that he's protected by the reporter's privilege, and also that this is meant to chill his right to free speech.
Imagine standing in front of a judge and saying, "My reputation matters more than the First Amendment." That's essentially what Blake Lively just argued in court against Perez Hilton. And honestly, it's one of the boldest or most reckless moves I've seen from a celebrity in years. This case isn't just about gossip blogs. It's about whether powerful people can weaponize the courts to silence critics, journalists, and even random social media users. If she succeeds, it sets a chilling precedent. If she fails, she risks cementing herself as the celebrity who couldn't take criticism. We're going to break this down. What Blake is really after, Perez's strategy, the contradictions in her argument, and why this battle could explode way beyond Hollywood. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button. If you want real breakdowns of celebrity courtroom drama, not sugar-coated PR fluff, you're in the right place. Blake Lively has been insisting that the backlash against her online isn't real. According to her, it's not genuine criticism. It's some organized smear campaign designed to destroy her reputation. So what does she do? She subpoenas ordinary people who've criticized her. And their responses? Brutal. They flat out said, "We don't like you. Nobody paid us. We just don't buy your act." That should have been the end of it. But Blake didn't stop there. She turned her attention to Perez Hilton. Now, whether you love him or hate him, Perez is one of the biggest gossip bloggers in pop culture history. Blake's team argues he's part of a coordinated scheme with Wayfair-related parties to create and spread content that paints her as a liar, a bully, and, let's be honest, not very likable. Perez, for his part, said absolutely not. He told the court, "I'm a journalist. I run my own platforms. I publish my own takes. And I'm protected by reporter's privilege."
Now, amazingly, not totally surprisingly, but amazingly, Blake Lively is arguing that her needs are more important than Perez's rights to free speech. Which is totally on brand, but so wild. And people will say that she has to make that argument if she wants to proceed with what she's doing, to which I would say, she needs to stop what she's doing.
Now, for those who don't live in legal land, reporter's privilege is like a shield. It says journalists can keep certain sources or notes private, so they're not forced to turn over sensitive info every time someone doesn't like a story. Without it, free press collapses. Here's where things get wild. Blake's lawyers actually argued that her personal need for Perez's information is more important than his First Amendment rights. Let that sink in. They're saying, yes, freedom of speech is important, but Blake Lively's reputation? More important. And if that doesn't sound like Hollywood entitlement in its purest form, I don't know what does. Now,
that is entirely the problem. She's crossing the line over and over and over again. This is not going to help her case at all. It makes her look terrible to the public, and she still thinks somehow that the backlash is not organic. So for people saying that she has to make the argument that her needs in this case are more important than his free speech and privileges, yes, that is the problem. The problem is that she is doing this at all. She actually does not have to make that argument. She doesn't have to do any of this shit.
Now here's the contradiction. Blake keeps insisting she's the victim of a smear campaign, but the evidence she's demanding doesn't exist. It's like asking Perez to hand over proof of Bigfoot. You can subpoena every forest in America, but if the creature isn't real, all you're going to find are trees. And that's exactly what the judge pressed her team on. He asked them to show how privileges like reporter's privilege apply here. Instead of hard evidence, Blake's lawyers launched into this story about Perez being part of a retaliation plot.
They launch into this tired song about how Perez Hilton is part of some scheme by the Wayfair parties, and that he's one of the content creators or journalists that they use to perpetuate retaliation against Blake Lively. Retaliation for what? I don't know, because there was no sexual harassment, and she's lying about that. But that's the story we're going with, I suppose. Mr. Hilton has failed to meet his heavy burden to demonstrate that he is entitled to avail himself of the federal common law reporter privilege because he did not procure the information while acting in the capacity of an independent investigative reporter. But even if he could, any such privilege is qualified and should not apply because the information Miss Lively seeks is relevant, material, and critical to her claims, and she has been unable to obtain it despite exhaustive efforts. Bitch, it doesn't exist. It doesn't matter how much you exhaust yourself. You got nothing. And by it, I mean evidence of a smear campaign. Even if she is successful in using the courts to violate people's rights in this situation because she's upset about things they said about her online, it will not be useful to her case. You'll be violating people's privileges and rights to privacy for no fucking reason.
Supposedly working with others to punish her for making harassment claims. But here's the problem. Those harassment claims were never proven. The retaliation theory doesn't hold water. And every time Blake drags another person into this mess, it looks less like justice and more like an obsession. Ask yourself this. If hundreds of people online are calling you a bully or a liar, do you really believe every single one of them is secretly on some peril? Or do you consider the possibility that maybe people just don't like the way you're handling things? Let's get into the legal weeds for a second. Blake's team is leaning on something called the three-prong test. And don't worry, I'll keep this simple. Basically, they're saying the info Perez has is vital to her case. She can't get it from anywhere else, and her need outweighs his First Amendment right.
The hundreds of videos and headlines that Mr. Hilton has published on his own platforms about Miss Lively perpetuate the same narratives as the Wayfair parties. She's claiming that they, were discrediting her and calling her a bully and a liar. Well, where's the lie? Perpetuate the same narratives, including by calling her a bully. Jesus Christ. Do you really think that people need all that much help to come to that conclusion?
Sounds neat on paper, right? But let's break that down. Prong 1. Is the info vital? Well, no, because there's no evidence of a smear campaign. You can't prove something that doesn't exist. That's like saying a magician's hat is vital evidence because it might contain a rabbit. Prong 2. She can't get it anywhere else. Also shaky. Why? Because the public already told her the truth. We don't like you. End of story. That's all the information she really needs. Prong 3. Her need outweighs free speech. That's the most dangerous one. If the court accepts that argument, it basically means celebrities can drag any journalist into court and demand private records just because they don't like what was written. Think about how that scales. Imagine every powerful politician, every billionaire, every Hollywood A-lister being able to say, my reputation is more important than the First Amendment. That's not just bad law, that's terrifying. And here's where Blake's strategy really backfires. Even if she wins, even if Perez has to hand something over, it won't change the narrative. She'll just look more controlling. She'll look like the celebrity who thought her image was worth rewriting the Constitution. What do you think? Genius legal gamble or career suicide in slow motion? Now, let's zoom out. In the court of public opinion, Blake's argument is already falling apart. The internet doesn't need Perez Hilton to tell them what to think. People have their own eyes, their own feeds, their own opinions. By dragging this into court, she's feeding the exact narrative she hates, that she's thin-skinned, controlling, and out of touch with reality. And the irony? Perez Hilton is walking away with a win. After the hearing, he explained that the judge ordered him to get quotes from forensic experts for a privilege log, basically a document mapping out what he does and doesn't have to hand over. And guess who has to pay for it? Blake. That's right. She's bankrolling the very process Perez is using to defend himself. If this were a movie, that's the perfect plot twist. The villain funds the hero's sword. Perez even seemed almost gleeful about it, like, fine, you want this log? Pay for my people to build it. He's turning her legal attack into his own advantage. And that's not just embarrassing. That's a PR disaster. Every headline, every TikTok recap, every tweet now frames Blake not as a victim, but as someone trying to buy her way out of criticism. Here's my honest take. This isn't about some smear campaign. This is about control. Blake Lively doesn't want to accept that the public backlash against her is organic. So instead of dealing with it, she's trying to rewrite the story through the courts. But that strategy is like playing whack-a-mole. Every time she silences one critic, 10 more pop up. Every subpoena, every filing, every court appearance just gives her critics more fuel. And the entitlement shines through in every line of her legal briefs. She's basically saying, I'm the victim. I'm the exception. The rules don't apply to me. That mindset isn't going to win her sympathy. It's going to isolate her. The real danger here is precedent. If she somehow convinces a judge that her need outweighs the First Amendment, what stops the next celebrity? Or the next politician? Or the next billionaire who doesn't like bad press? That's why this case matters. It's not just about Blake and Perez. It's about whether the First Amendment bends when enough money and ego are involved. So what do you think? Is this Blake defending herself? Or is this Blake versus free speech itself?